Welcome everyone to another live Q&A to bring you general awareness how AI is shaping dentistry. One of the things I love about working in dentistry is the people that I've had the opportunity to meet. I met Will at the last Midwinter Chicago conference, and at first I really thought that it was another F1, another IT company. But as I've gotten to know you and your company, I've realized that you guys do so much more than that. What really stood out to me was how much and how generally you care and your business cares about the success of practices you work with. Not only just fixing computers and everything else that comes with that, but helping practices be aware of smarter technology, connecting them with trusted partners, staying ahead of innovations like AI, and ultimately helping dental teams provide an even better experience for patients. So I thought that was a conversation worth sharing. So today I'm sitting down with William Kohl, CEO of F1 IT, to talk more about what really makes a dental technology partner different. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And, I'm standing up now, so I guess we're not sitting down. um, yeah, so first of all, it was awesome to meet you. And, positioning ourselves as a dental specific IT company, you would ask, like, what does that mean? Like, what is
Yeah,
that? Why do I even care about that? Right.
yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the difference here and what we provide is more so of a partnership, right? You think of an IT company, just what pops into your head. I mean, really, what pops into your head? Like,
I mean, I thought cybersecurity, technology, websites, maybe SEO, some marketing, things like that.
sure. And that's the thing. IT is such a broad realm, right? If it sounds like technology, we just kind of assume, hey, let me call IT or like I need IT help, right? So it really introduces the comprehensive nature in which we help practices. And I think the experience is really a big factor that plays a role here. As F1IT, myself and a bunch of our team members, we've been doing this for a little over 23 years. And that experience comes along with, getting to know a dental practice's workflow, what the software looks like, what can break, some of the things in between, the integrations. And I would say, even most importantly, like what it means for one of those things to go wrong, like one of those things to go down. CBCT, for example, it doesn't have necessarily the same impact as a printer, or maybe my computer's a little slow, I don't know why, or a massive security issue. What does that do to a dental practice? And that's where we really fit in, as a partner, really. Because our experience and our expertise here is so broad, we can help in many different ways, and that's the way that we position ourselves as an extension of your team, not just a service or like a utility bill or something like that.
Now, you've always been in dentistry? Like, why dentistry? I know you've been doing this for a lot longer than what I thought in the beginning, but why dentistry?
So it's a question I get asked all the time, and in reality, that kind of starts with me, I guess. Growing up, bringing it way back, I've always been a curious person by nature. Finding out how things work, taking things apart, so on and so forth, and it really just transitions into this really broad interest in technology, right? So, even in high school, taking things apart, my father was a software engineer for Northrop Grumman. Um, and in the medical space, my mother was is a nurse. So I've always been surrounded by the two, and having kind of an affinity for both. The caring side of the things and the calculating side of things, right? So you know, my mother, being as caring, of course, as she did get me an appointment with an orthodontist, and it was actually in my orthodontist consultation that the answer to this kind of lies, right? So in that consultation, this was a while ago. There was a Panorex behind me. It was a Gendex Panorex. These things were like really, really expensive back in the day.
Yeah.
It was one of the first practices to even have one. And the doctor's, he's frustrated, not at me, of course, but like just the machine wasn't working. And I think jokingly, he said, do you happen to know anything about computers? Just a general statement. And me being the confident youngster I was like, what, actually, I do. Um, so again, maybe in hindsight, maybe a little bit of a HIPAA violation, but he brought me around the desk and I took a look at the system, and I would, in my mind and the way that I approach things, it was kind of a simple answer, right? It was a networking issue. So fixed it, had this giant X-ray taken of me, which I was like, what is this? and and we went on the consultation, and again, in hindsight, that's revenue for that doctor, right? Imagine he wasn't able to have a proper consultation, a comprehensive discussion about what the treatment plan would look like. And again, why dentistry? The key thing here is, and this is where the opportunity really presented itself, was he gave me a call like 2 weeks later. The key thing here is that it was fixed and it kept working. At the time, he was working with a fairly large IT firm, obviously much bigger than we were at that time. And I think they weren't specialized, right? They didn't know what it meant for that machine to go down. And the reality here was that it took them months for them to even think about any kind of solution. It was down like consistently for months. So anyway, that call ended up in like, how would you like to work for my practice? And that expanded to redoing his entire technology infrastructure. I mean, the whole thing. Changed the software, upgraded everything, new servers, the backup system, entirely redone, brand new computers around the entire office. And again, I was not a dental technology expert at that time, but I learned a lot, and I think that was one of the most amazing opportunities for me, and it made me realize that there's kind of a void, at least at the time in the industry, that hey, technology is really starting to, at the time, not necessarily take over, but it was an essential part of the practice. The technology infrastructure, modern dental practices today, if you really step back and like think about it, they run almost exclusively on technology.
Yeah.
And it's only when that stuff doesn't work that you realize like, hey, I need to do something about this. I need to fix my security, my, like how well this stuff works. Just the workflows, and it really affects practices nowadays. And that's my why dentistry. That was quite a while ago.
No, I know it's a really, really cute story. I know, my dad's a retired oral surgeon, and I get asked a lot, well, how I got into dentistry and how I saw how far back did I see dentistry evolve. And I mean, I remember you're talking 20 years back, same, like very similar to you. I was helping my dad dip film in the dark room. So I've been in
It smells
dentistry, and I
good.
know there's a lot of people that have been in dentistry way longer than us, but I've been in dentistry since like the dipping film era. And I mean, we had gloves at least, but it was way different than what it is now. How has your company adapted and how has it evolved in all that time?
Right. So I mean, that's the key thing, and I was right there with you. Like when you mentioned the films, all that came back to mind was that room. It was dark, and then there was this
And
one
it's
light, and the
so
smells.
bad.
You remember the chemical smell of that? It was
Yeah.
wild. But again, evolution, right? That's what we're talking about. And the straight up answer to this is we never stop, right? A lot of where we met, Chicago midwinter. It's on our side, generally speaking, not necessarily to sell stuff or anything like that, which most other vendors are there for. From a
That's right.
technology perspective, it is a learning experience for us, and I think the same for you.
Yeah.
Meeting a lot of course, the doctors, learning about the hurdles, the struggles, the goals that they have, and of course, vetting out and meeting new partnerships, new technologies that are out there. So the evolution has been ongoing consistently and constantly. So, if you talked about AI today and how prevalent it is, and almost how crowded it might be. Talk about back in the day, we're talking about films, and so you tell them that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be doing this, they'd think it's wild. And we're talking about, that's 20 years ago, but really growing up, we're talking about Terminator, right? You're talking about
Yeah.
Skynet and AI, and if you were to bring it up back then, people weren't ready for it. So I think it's really an evolving thing that we're always learning. It's kind of that mountain with no top type of thing.
Yeah, and you know what I love about your company even more, the more and more I've gotten to know your company and you, is that you guys are constantly looking at different technology and depending and always updating yourselves in what's going on and educating yourselves so that you can better educate these practice owners. Sometimes it can be, I mean, it's overwhelming for me, and I'm in dentistry and I'm in AI. I can't even imagine how overwhelming it could be for someone who they're maybe towards their end of their career and they're getting hit with all of this AI technology. How does F1 IT help with the partners that you guys have to be able to help dental practitioners and practice owners make prudent decisions or at least be more aware of what's out there?
Sure, and there's a bunch of things in there baked into even that question.
Yeah.
We talk about people, dentists with their practices maybe on the on one end of the dental practice life cycle, but we also work with startups and everything in between. So it's really the entire dental practice life cycle where we can help. If you think about it, technology wise, because there's so much out there, um, our position is not really to build everything. And let me explain that. It's like, you take this thing and we're not cookie cuttering everything. If you think of F1 IT, again, we are passionate about technology. We are actually just going out there and learning about it, learning about maybe pros, cons, security issues, ways it can help, admin, clinical, all of it. You can think of us more as a filter, right? So the advantage here is that in the years that we've been in business, fortunately we've had the experience of building many hundreds of offices, right? And even from like a small practice organization, you're talking about maybe like the experience in building 12 different practices, 15, like that's very impressive. But here it is, we can see what works and what doesn't from direct feedback from our customers. We explore what works, and we're really protective of what we would refer as a potential solution to our customers. So again, think of us as a filter. It goes through that filter first, and then of course our position is partnering with you, right? We need to get to know you. Every practice is different. Those differences could be in it could be in experience. It could be in budget. It could be in your demographic or your patient base, right? Like those are all factors in what the strategy might be technology wise. And again, getting to know you, we can filter out all these things and like, hey, I really suggest that you check out these three options. So I hope I answered the question here, and it's
I
kind of broad, but
I love that about your company because I know that I talk to a lot of dentists, and that's the one thing that they always tell me. They're just so overwhelmed with the amount of options. It's if they can have someone tell them and kind of filter things out so that it's a little easier for them to at least acknowledge what's out there. Because right now there's just so many things going on and there's so many companies that it's just so overwhelming that I think practices decide to do nothing because they're so overwhelmed. And I'm kind of the same way. Like when I get very overwhelmed, I just kind of do nothing because I'm just overstimulated, overwhelmed, and it's just really hard to keep up with everything that's happening. But for practices that want to stay ahead, what are some simple ways that they can be more proactive when it comes to managing their technology, would you say?
again, a very broad. So with the technology in general, right? And I know the overwhelm. I feel it. I see it almost every time I speak to a new practice is that overwhelm, right? You went to school to become a dentist. That's why your patients love you. That's where your expertise is at. The key tip I would give is really just to make sure you're asking all the right questions. Evaluate everything. You do have a pretty unique opportunity to, reevaluate the technology and how it's better going to better your practice. Because as a technology company, that's what we want to see. We know it, we see it, we believe in the empowering nature of technology, right? There's a million tools out there, and what we want to see is having dental practices, I guess, do their best work, right?
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, some of these tips, first of all, always ask the right questions. Um, Evaluate all your options from a clinical standpoint, which is probably going to be your best bet as a dentist, but also from an administrative standpoint, right? How easy is it to learn? How easy is it to change the schedule around? There's so many factors that play into the efficiency and productivity of your practice, and that doesn't even start to touch the security of things, right? So as a dental practice, your patients are trusting you with their information, right? They are not themselves cybersecurity experts, and generally speaking, neither are you.
Yeah.
Um, your patients are trusting you with that information that has the potential to be used maliciously. And those malicious actors who are out there, they know that. And the threshold of security for dental practices, as compared to a lot of other industries, is pretty low compared with the amount of access they have. Right? You think about the government, the Pentagon, you probably don't hear about it all the time, but they get hacked, right? We're talking about credit reporting agencies get hacked. Huge, huge hospital systems with enormous IT and security budgets, they get hacked.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, as a dental practice, you actually have access to the same, I would say, very similar amount of data, a lot of data and trust. And generally speaking, as a private practice, that security threshold is generally lower, making kind of a terrible mixture of a target for malicious activity. So again, it's setting up this infrastructure right the first time, right? So I know sometimes, because we build a lot of practices too, right? So, and especially for startups, budget is always like one of the top tier things. There's design, there's how many rooms can I build into this project, and then one of the last things people talk about is the technology side of things. And
Yeah.
when we're doing build outs, like, oh, I really want this beautiful sconce, right? That sconce has to be in my office. So I'm going to take about $2,000 off of my IT budget. And I'm like, I believe in you. This is your practice. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you that it is really hard to do this stuff later, right? We need to have more of a focus on the impact that technology has in a dental practice and what you need to invest in it just for yourself. To be honest with you, even if you're a do-it-yourselfer kind of practice, let's even talk. We're a very value-first type of company. Advice, pointing you in the right direction, we're all about it. So we just want to make sure that we're moving the needle forward, if that makes sense.
People don't think it can happen to them until it actually happens to them, and then they wish they would have taken action beforehand. What would you say if you had to put a percentage or a number from your experience, all these customers that come back or people that have come to you and said, oh, I got hacked or whatnot, and now they're trying to work backwards, what percentage is that, or what number is that, if you had to give it a number?
The number might be a little difficult, but I will tell you, and I'll explain this. As an IT company, we have a bit of a conundrum, right? We have our customers, and oftentimes they're very happy, but also they have I guess the difficulty in like, hey, what am I paying you for? Nothing's ever happening. We never call you. And I'm like, that's it. That's why you're paying. But here's the other side of the spectrum, right? So we get a lot of calls, unfortunately, after the fact, kind of addressing what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And being in business for so long, I will, very unfortunately, we have a large list of disaster stories, and it is a terrible lesson learned. And we don't never present this as like an "I told you so" moment. It just we never want it to happen. Um, but let's talk that situation, right? So we're talking about ransomware,
Yeah.
fires, floods, things like that, breaches from emails or otherwise. One of the greatest security risks in your practice is going to be maybe you, but most definitely your staff, right? This is your business. Obviously, you care about it. But, when you have the threshold of like an antivirus saying like, are you sure you want to run this file? It's all you shouldn't, but your front desk is like, I really want to see this file. And it just runs and all this stuff is happening. And I gotta tell you, let's talk percentages to address your question. Um, you know, if anyone were to come into this situation, anyone, and tell you that if you do this one thing, you're going to be 100% foolproof, I will tell you very confidently they're lying to you. The approach here is a layered approach, right? And that's the way that we approach everything. And again, always learning, always reevaluating our tools for how well it works, how it's evolving with today's technology, today's threats. Um, but I will tell you that with any IT company, not just us, having that type of support, the team to lean on with those enterprise tools, with the experience of knowing what your dental practice needs, uh, the vast majority of practices that are going to have that type of support, you know, the likelihood that you're going to run into trouble is like infinitesimally smaller than if you didn't. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
We see it, a lot of times when somebody got hacked or something went really wrong, we can tell right away, hindsight is 2020, but like the right things weren't done in the first place. You need to take a proactive stance on your technology. Not only fixing things when it breaks, because that's already too late, right? Being proactive and making sure that you're evaluating your computers, how well they're working, how compliant they are, how secure your network is. So I'm struggling to put this into a number, but it's like
I know.
it's
I
really it's really bad if you don't do the right thing.
I think I shared this with you. I've most of my career has been in the DSO world,
Sure.
um, in the bigger organizations. And honestly, because they're bigger organizations, and this is kind of foolish of me to have thought this, I never thought that something like that could happen because you I thought because they're bigger and because they have more of a support, more people working for them, a more structured approach, and you have all of these people in different categories like working for them. I never thought something like this would happen, but I was working at a particular DSO, which I'm not going to name, that at the time there was some type of cybersecurity issue. And let me tell you, we were down for over a month. And I'm a dental hygienist. And I mean, I remember the first week we barely could see patients because, like you said, everything is digital. I mean, we had to take x rays again to be able to at least proceed with dental work. And it was just total chaos because of even the dental charting. We couldn't go back to seeing what were the existing was, all of the notes that we had taken. So if anybody wanted to move forward, we had to retake x-rays. So we lost not millions, we lost billions
That's
of
wild. That's
of,
crazy.
of like work. And it was just there was an uncertainty of like what was going to happen to the patient trust, right? Like people don't talk about that. Also, like to us, like what was that going to look like? And everybody at that point we're like, maybe we should start looking for another job. But it happened. It happened, and it does happen because not long after that, to be honest, there was another DSO that had worked in before that, that was also, they had a cybersecurity issue, and that one didn't take as long as we did. But I'm telling you, it happens. Maybe some people don't hear about it as much, but it does happen. So you don't want to be that practice that goes through something like this, and now your reputation is completely ruined. I mean, that
Right.
just follows you, right?
It's devastating on so many levels. Of course, like you mentioned, the financial impact, the reputation is a lot harder to come back from. Think about it from a patient perspective, right? Like
Oh,
we're both in the world, right? But like, think about it as you being a patient, right? Just give the situation where like, hey, I scheduled this thing, and I'm on my way. Unfortunately, it's a few miles, maybe it's 10 miles away from their home.
yeah.
Might be a subway ride here. I'm in New York, so
Yeah.
um, I went all the way to this practice again with so many options abound, right? Especially here in New York City,
Mhm.
there's whole buildings full of dentists. I go to your practice, and one, they don't even know who you are. Your system is down, right? The dental practice's system is down. I didn't know you were coming in. I had no way to even tell you not to come. Okay, we're gonna try anyway. I might be one of those practices that are a little old school. We maybe have paper charts or something like that. Taking X-rays. I will tell you that like almost nobody has those film X-rays anymore.
Yeah.
um, just imagine you come all this way and you're waiting in the waiting room for like an untold amount of time. You don't even know what's going on. Like how long is your patience going to last? Your you just sitting there in that waiting room, like how likely is it that you're going to come back? And of course everyone now is like a Google review keyboard warrior, right? Like can you imagine, like I was in the waiting room for like 12 minutes too long, and they didn't know who I was, and all these things that really just compounded into a bad experience. Now that bad experience is spreading, and so on and so forth. It's reputation damage. And sure, maybe you're a thriving practice and you can recover from those financial damages. The reputation part, the alerting into, hey, I'm sorry, but OCR demands this, HIPAA wise. Um, your data was breached and it was due to our systems, right? How
Mm.
likely are you as a patient, like, oh, I'm going to go back there. I got an appointment next week. Yeah, it's going to be fine.
Oh, yeah, no.
They're not
No,
coming back.
I'm not coming
Um,
back.
and that again presents itself another conundrum on our side because we've helped a lot of practices, right? And unfortunately it's a lot of times after the fact, right? It could be a ransomware event, it could be data loss, it could be just like whatever the situation is. I will tell you that they're not as willing to shout about it, meaning like praise us for it, because that means exposing themselves to like, here's all the things that I wasn't doing right, right? So it's it's terrible to tell, and it's terrible to hear, and it's obviously a lot worse to experience. And if this can serve as a warning to anyone else, I really hope it helps. I don't want this to be a fear campaign or anything, but
Right.
we we have a lot of stories that I wish the outcome was different. But again, if anything to extract out of all this, be proactive. Even from the financial perspective, it always costs less to be proactive than reactive to a situation like what you were explaining.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'm very grateful to have gotten to know you and your company and what you guys are all about. I think it's very, very important that you guys help practices in a different light. And I definitely want people to know about that. And if it helps other dental practices think differently about the role of technology and how it can play in their success, I think this was a great, great Q&A. Thank you again for your time, and talk to you guys soon. And thank you,
Yeah,
Will.
not a problem. Always happy to help.
Thanks for watching.